This lesson demonstrates a pair of methods of the color class that can be used to get slightly darker and lighter shades of the color that you already have. This example shows the color white turning to dark gray in 4 steps, and the color dark gray turning slowly to white in 4 steps. Here we create a reference to a color object and store the color white into it, and here is a dark to light color reference with the predefined color dark gray stored into it. Now this loop contains the value of I and counts it from 0 to 4. The purpose of the loop is to paint 2 rows of 5 rectangles across the window. In the top row, the rectangles will each be darker than the one that came before it, and in the bottom row, each one will be lighter. Here we set the color in the graphics object to the first color, and then we fill the rectangle with that color. Notice how the X value, the horizontal position of the rectangle, is determined by the value of I multiplied by 50. That's the width of the rectangle. Then the next color is set into the graphics object, and another rectangle is drawn below the first one. Now, here is where the shading is done. The color object has a method named darker that returns a slightly darker version of itself. This program takes the darker version of the color and stores its address in the reference that was used to store the original color. That is, we replace the original color with a darker version of itself. That's okay because we aren't going to need the previous color again. The next time through the loop, we'll get an even darker color and replace this one. The color class also has a method named brighter that returns a lighter shade of the same color, and we also use it to replace the color that we already had. Now, when the program runs, it looks like this. As you can see, the color white turns into very dark gray in 4 steps, and dark gray turns to white in 4 steps. Now, in all honesty, this shading thing doesn't always work as smoothly as you'd like. I mean, you can't just stick any old color in there and have it give you nice shadings every time. For example, you can't get lighter and darker shades of black. And some colors just work better than others. If you think you might want to use this, I suggest that you use an example program like this one to experiment with the colors, and I can promise you'll get some surprises. For one thing, they're not the inverse of one another. I mean, if you get a darker version of a color, then use the brighter method on that new color, it may or may not bring you back to where you started. But to be honest, the way we're using them here is not what the darker and brighter methods were intended to do. It was intended for trimmings and decorations. Here, let me show you. Now, this paint method shows how you can put a beveled edge around a rectangle. This method draws a rectangle by using darker and lighter versions of the current color. It adjusts the colors so the center portion of the rectangle will either look raised or lowered, but it draws the outside edge of the rectangle only 1 pixel wide. So, to be able to see it, you need to draw several of them, one inside the other. Now, here's how we do that. We start off by setting the current color to cyan. Now, any color would do. You can even do this with a color of your own. Anyway, the values of X, Y, width, and height are set to the dimensions of the rectangle to be framed. The inside of that rectangle is then filled with the color. Each time a new frame is drawn around the rectangle, it's only 1 pixel thick. So this loop is used to draw 5 of them. Each time this method is called, it draws 1 rectangle. Notice this last argument. If this is set to true, the colors will be adjusted in such a way that the rectangle will appear to be raised. If it's set to false, it will appear to be lowered. True and false are both keywords in the Java language. They're constants of the Boolean data type. After one of the rectangles is drawn, the values of X and Y are reduced by 1. This moves the upper left-hand corner up by 1 pixel and to the left by 1 pixel. This is the correct position to draw the next rectangle surrounding the one that was drawn previously. The height and width are both increased, so the lower right-hand corner will be 1 pixel further to the right and closer to the bottom. Now here's what it looks like. The darker and brighter methods called from inside Fill 3D Rect are designed so that one or the other of them, if not both of them, will work in such a way that there seems to be a frame around the window. This one is brighter on top, so it looks raised. Here's another version of the program that's exactly the same in every way except that last argument passed to Draw 3D Rect is false instead of true. Now this rectangle is shaded on top, so it looks like it's lowered into the window instead of being raised. So now you know how buttons are made. In a future lesson, I'm going to show you how you can have mouse clicks switch the appearance back and forth.